fasting. But before the fasting, we have to have the rebellion, our inner rebellion. What is Fat Tuesday really is our rebellion against something that is not what we want to do. But however, most of the things that we don't want to do are good for us. Silence, fasting, corporal mortification. There's a good reason. But I don't know if you can say that, but Jesus wanted it with wholeheartedly, unconditional love to do it for us. But he is perfect God, perfect human, and we're just human. So without further ado, we're going to discuss everything what we can talk about our rebellion on Fat Tuesday and fasting for the rest of the Lenten season. So we always have this, and we're going to talk about if you want to know more about fasting, the different types of fasting. There's not just one type of fasting. When we say fasting, we talk about caloric fasting, fasting from the amount of calories that we eat. But there's such thing also as postponement of pleasure, which, believe it or not, also has a profound effect in our brain, in our immune system. Fasting also from the new plague of humanity, digital overdose, or information obesity. We call infobesity, and that we're talking about digital fasting. And I'm going to talk to you about the science, the neurophysiology of why online shopping can be a form of a good fasting for us. So let's focus on the location where it is. It is in this area here, in Facebook and in YouTube. It would be the amygdala. We talk about amygdala all the time. Well, amygdala is a very small area here from YouTube and here from Facebook. That green area is very small, and it's where the information comes in, whether it's emotional, whether it's sensory, whether it's anything that would affect our sensory perception. Too much bombardment of information affects the amygdala and heightens the activity of amygdala, such that if you don't calm it, if you don't calm it down, it will affect you in terms of your health, mental ability, and also your cognitive ability. In essence, it is important for us to have a good control of our amygdala, and it's easy to do. We can do fasting, we can do meditation, and we can do also some other corporal mortification that calms down the amygdala. The second term that we want to talk about is related to the amygdala is the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the branch of the autonomic nervous system which responds autonomically. Even without warning, it happens. Even just with a sense of smell that you'll be reminded of a traumatic event that triggers sympathetic event. This is a fight-flight reaction. This is the branch of the autonomic system that you don't want to be trapped in it. Your goal would be to go to the parasympathetic, because sympathetic is just for survival. Survival meaning there's a threat for somebody who is going to devour you. If you're an animal, there's a lion coming in. You need to get all the cortisol going up to produce the glucose so that there will be energy to the brain quickly, and there's blood flow going to the muscle so you can run. But it's not meant to be sustained, what you call chronic stress. Akin to that is that the stress is related to a hormone called cortisol, which is what you call the stress hormone. The stress hormone increases sugar. The sugar triggers the adrenal glands to produce norepinephrine and epinephrine. That usually is the cause of elevated blood pressure. It's for a good cause in acute settings. However, chronically, it's harmful for your organ system, which gives you this end-stage organ disease, like chronic kidney disease, atherosclerosis, and cause, eventually, if it's in the brain, it can cause dementia or memory loss. So, hi, Crack 20121. Where are you from, Crack? Please let us know. The autonomic nervous system is such that it's so involuntary that even people who have, for example, an example would be anxiety, that they would not even know why they're reacting that way, but it is related to the past experience of sympathetic overtone. Unfortunately, if you dwell on this sympathetic nervous system, it can also affect a lot of things, including the microbiome, the bacteria, the good bacteria, the microbiota that we're talking about. The microbiota is also very important in terms of maintaining the health, because without the microbiome, the gut immune brain connection will not function. There will be a discord, such that when you're chronically stressed, there's evidence that the type of bacteria that proliferates in the gut also will proliferate and also make this kind of changes in your body, primarily causing intestinal permeability, or what you call leaky gut, and also destroy the microbiome, which produces those kind of microbiome, proliferation of microbiome that does not produce butyrate. Butyrate is important in terms of healing the gut, especially the mucin layer of the intestine. The intestine needs to be protected by the mucin layer so that the foreign body does not go inside the intestine to go to the immune kingdom. Such that if it's leaking, if you have noticed in your allergy testing, if you're allergic to one substance or protein, most likely you'll be allergic to many. And if you have an autoimmune disease diagnosis, most likely you have another autoimmune disease diagnosis. What I'm talking about is that if you have a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis, most likely you will have a coexistent psoriasis or Hashimoto's or celiac disease. Beanie Boys High School, hi, and I hope you can stay at the end of the 30-minute talk. As I said, it's a gut immune brain connection. You cannot dispute that connection. The immune system in the gut, for example, is represented by the spinat cells inside the intestines, the lining of the intestines. Look at the appendix. Appendix is an immune system. If you remove that, it doesn't make you immunocompromised. However, the immune kingdom will also get compromised. How you doing, Miss Donna Ricard? My good old friend from Valparaiso. Happy Fat Tuesday. The silencing of the brain is very important. Fasting from calorie is just one bit of the kingdom of fasting. There's many different types of fasting. Quickly, for the caloric fasting, it would be the 16-hour fasting and 8-hour of feeding. For example, practical means would be you eat your last meal at 6 o'clock p.m., and then you eat on the 16 hours later or 12 hours later, better 16, at 10 a.m. Through the night, you don't really need to worry about dying, because there's a process called gluconeogenesis that's achieved by the liver, tapping the glycogen, which is a stored form of glucose, when you eat through the day. Believe me, through the years, there's a lot of glycogen in the liver that had been transformed to fat. And this form of storage is very important that we need to tap. Because one tip, for example, if you want to remove the visceral fat, what you need to do is to fast while exercising. Because when you're exercising, you're tapping yourself first the glucose. Once the glucose reserve is done, then the body will look for the fat storage in the visceral fat that had been performed. Thank you. It was Happy Father's Day too. Huh? According to my friend Donna, when you fast from calories, remember, calorie is not really important in terms of survival. That's very intriguing. What you really need are the antioxidants and also the trace minerals. What we focus all the time are the macronutrients, but the micronutrients, the antioxidants, the vitamin C, glutathione, and the trace minerals that we hardly discuss about, that came about most likely get known during COVID, with the zinc, chromium for metabolism, selenium for thyroid support, and these are important. And guess what? These micronutrients, antioxidants, vitamins, and trace minerals, these are best absorbed in the jejunum, the second part of the intestine, which is the kingdom also of where the microbiome also dwells. So if we don't take care of this part of the intestine, hardly we would survive, because we will be plagued with chronic illness, autoimmune disease, SIBO. What is SIBO? Quickly. SIBO is what you call small intestinal bowel overgrowth. That small intestinal bowel overgrowth comes from the proliferation of bad bacteria that travels from the colon, which is coming from usually from the enteric organism, best exemplified by E. coli. E. coli thrives if there's no for example, when the good bacteria is not there, E. coli proliferates. This is the cause of what you call the enterotoxigenic diarrhea. That's very common in the third world country. And if left unattended, these enterotoxigenic E. coli, or the E. coli, can produce a substance called colectin. Colectin mutates the colon to form early onset colon cancer. Early onset colon cancer is not just about the Western diet, but what's in the Western diet is the lack of fiber. The fiber is the friend of the bacteria. The bacteria needs to ferment the fiber so that it will improve the health of the intestine. So without the fiber that you are supposed to eat during fasting, give you a clue. For example, on Wednesdays and Fridays, you eat only once. My spiritual director would say, do not eat, you only eat once, possibly dinner or lunch, with your family. Don't tell anybody to say, hey, I'm fasting. I cannot eat with you right now because I'm fasting. Just be quiet. But through the day, you have to hydrate. What's important is fiber is more important. That's why I have problems accepting the carnivore diet for a prolonged period of time. Because what happens is carnivore diet, especially the red meat, is a precursor of substance called TMA, or trimethylamine. Trimethylamine goes to the liver to form trimethylamine oxide, or TMAO. This is the one that is the substance that is highly associated with cardiovascular disease. But lo and behold, this TMAO can be suppressed by certain bacteria. But the good bacteria that can suppress this needs the fiber. That's the key. If you eat red meat and you eat your broccoli 2 cups twice a day, you will be fine. In fact, the new guideline now is to have a lot of meat, especially red meat, poultry, legumes, on top of the pyramid, inverted, and the oils, extra virgin olive oil, avocado, chicken, poultry, and all those stuff. Now, close to this discussion is the fasting, that is the substances that are associated with fasting. I'm talking about ketones. Ketones is the best, the most efficient substance, especially in the brain. In the book called The Brain Energy by a Harvard psychiatrist, he exposed that, he presented this question: why is the common symptom of mental illness are, number one, fatigue and brain fogging? Well, the common denominator is that there is no energy in the brain cell. I'm talking about simple ATP. ATP is a coin, the Bitcoin of energy to help the brain process. Ketone is the best tool, is the best energy. In fact, ketone or fasting had been demonstrated to cure seizures. It has also been demonstrated to improve outcomes of performance of patients with autism or even with ADHD. Because maybe for a child who has autism, maybe you cannot really say that you need to fast. But giving them the energy of the brain, not the sugar, is very important. Very intriguing, but very plausible and is well accepted in research also. So fasting is twofold. Calorie, but you cannot miss the trace elements, and hydration, because the end organ, especially the kidney, needs to survive. Let's talk about digital detox. We're all bombarded with all this information. It seemed to be passive, but I've remembered that was not too long ago that I was working in the hospital, and I would be bombarded with a lot of text messaging. But then you feel guilty that am I not wanting to engage with the nurses? But it was not the case. It was actually the energy that's spent when I have to pause and distract and then reboot my brain. The rebooting mechanism is actually very expensive in terms of energy. That's why you at the end of the day you have this brain fatigue. And how can you interact socially, even with your wife? The wife would probably be the 30th phone call or the 30th text message that you have to respond. But you have to understand where you come from. So in essence, if you don't control those environments, that eventually I was able to shake hands with some administrators where I came from, especially the sleep deprivation that we went through, life improved. And then you look back, why did I have to be subjected to those kind of work environment when it can be controlled? Digital detox, for example, the likes from Facebook, it can be devastating. Try it. Post something and nobody likes or gives a like. You will feel betrayed. You feel sometimes it becomes a point of argument among friends. Like, okay, I'm going to defriend you because you did not like my post. That is actually a reality. Then it becomes a point where there is some substitute of the reality of the relationship. There is such thing as now an AI companion, an AI relationship. It is a safe haven for many, or those who are sensitive, because AI is not a person. AI is very passive, does not give criticism, and so it becomes like a reassurance. But it's a self-reassurance, because really, if God was criticized and bullied by Pontius Pilate and Herod, he exemplified what is the reality of life. But then the Stoic Marcellinus would also say, if you control your emotions and also be able to manage the people around you, hostile environment or toxic environment or toxic relationship, be quick to say, this is it. You need to get away from my life and move on and fill it with the love of Jesus so that you can also love other people. What about silence? The book of Cardinal Sarah, which is, Cardinal Sarah is from, I forgot where he's from. You know, Cardinal Sarah, Nigeria maybe, I don't know. But he wrote a book called The Power of Silence. Well, Jesus also exemplified that Jesus did not say anything in front of Herod, did not say anything in front of Pontius Pilate. He would just go quiet, go to the mountains, to the hills, and pray and meditate and talk to his God, to his Father. Do we really need to talk back and reason out if somebody criticizes us? It seems like the wisdom of people before us or who have studied these things recommends that we don't really need to respond right away. In fact, responding right away would probably be counterproductive because the words that may be coming out from your mouth might boomerang on you and possibly just aggravate the whole situation. Take a pause, think through, and then go through with a thinking process and say, I apologize, be humble that I have said that, and let's move on. Let's talk about digital shopping. Digital shopping is the same as almost like the digital social media. You're on these algorithm. You're captured with the algorithm. Number one, there's an unending inventory online, so we have to be careful about that. If you notice, you buy something, I suggest you that you consider buying this. AI knows you. Second, there's unending satiation, meaning satisfaction of what you want. Because a lot of times there's an impulse buying associated with digital shopping. It makes you happy, it makes you sad, it makes you anxious, it makes you feel like a FOMO, fear of missing, fear of missing out. This is a very a recent phenomenon, and I think it's just getting aggravated with social media. You feel like you're missing something. And this fear of missing something keeps a void in you and makes you yearn for something that is not actually there. My friend and I were talking about this last night when we were having sauna. And we were talking about, have you noticed that if you wish to become holy, you tend to retract and you become not holy. There's always this temptation. But if you just let go and let your life go and entrust everything to Jesus, it becomes smooth and you become more happy. If you look for something and like you fight for relationship, and that relationship will never come, there's always a good teaching to say, accept what you have right now, because if God wills it, it will come. The same with digital shopping. The good old days of going through, taking out, relaxing yourself, and go to the actual bargaining in terms of going to the market is gone. It's a 1-minute dopamine spike that will never end, because the next time you go to the computer, it will be there. I suggest that you buy something. So all these things, fasting in your mind and in your impulse affects the executive function, the prefrontal cortex, the decision maker. If you don't improve this prefrontal cortex, the growth or neuroplasticity of the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, by how? Meditation, guided breathing, simple thing. Jose knows about this. Jose is online. You breathe in 4 times, you hold, exhale, count 6, you hold down. And the same token, you borrow the prayer of the great Saint Anthony of the desert. When you inhale, you say, Jesus, Son of the living God. Hold, you exhale, have mercy on us sinners. Come 3 o'clock, you can also do the chaplet of divine mercy. You breathe in, you say, Jesus, for example, what do you say? The chaplet of divine mercy. For the sake of his sorrowful passion, you inhale, hold, have mercy on us sinners, you exhale. This moment of being silent helps your brain recalibrate or rewire. Serotonin goes up, GABA goes up, taurine goes up. The perfusion or the circulation to the brain, to the hippocampus, which is the center for memory and also for joy, is increased. The amygdala circulation decreases such that over time, the hippocampus actually goes by neuroplasticity, and the amygdala decreases in size. So come to think about those, over time, the predominant command center becomes the happy and the memory, while the amygdala, which is the center for anxiety and depression, is diminished. So that when somebody criticizes you, most likely your response will be, all right, we'll talk about that, instead of being a reactive, impulsive reaction. So chronic noise exposure is a friend for the sympathetic tone. So there's a good cause for us to be quiet. And studies have shown that actually 2 minutes of silence, that's probably one whole song equivalent. You can find a good music, Bach maybe, or something not so noisy with very a varied rhythm. It's enough to recalibrate your brain. The neurotransmitters will favor calmness of your brain, and that also affects the microbiota. And it gives you this kind of neurotransmitters. And remember, the serotonin is 90% produced in the gut. There are certain bacteria that produce serotonin. And these are the type of bacteria that feeds on the fiber, such that fiber is very important. And it goes hand in hand with the fasting. Fasting mimicking diet, which is less than 500 calories, is equivalent to about 2 cups of vegetables and a soup for the main meal, and a little portion of fish, for example, on Fridays and Wednesdays. Through the day on Wednesdays and Fridays, then you can just hydrate. You can use soup, or what you call this, a broth, and that counts for that. Less than 500 calories. There's another kind of fasting which is promoted by Dr. Longo, a fasting for 7 days, and it's essentially every day you're consuming only less than 500 calories per day. It's called a prolonged diet. Essentially, it's less than 500 calories of crackers and chips and soup. But you can do it yourself. You don't have to. You don't have really to spend that much of money for $150 for a box to fast. You can modify it and make it part of your lifestyle. Fasting from visual things, meaning watching movie, makes a big difference in terms of rewiring your brain. If you have problems sleeping, most likely you have to check first sleep hygiene. Number one, is your eyes getting in too much of the blue light coming from the TV or from the computer? You need to darken the room so that the melatonin continues to rise at night. Melatonin is shut down when there's a blue light coming in. So the recommendation would be to use amber light or red light. That's why going to a sauna with infrared is good. Now, quickly about sauna. Sauna is also helps the sympathetic tone to be reverted to parasympathetic tone. So it's a good ritual to do with when through the day and before retiring. So fasting in itself is very helpful. Not just caloric fasting, but also fasting from the sensory. Take back to the Garden of Eden. The reason why it's the most powerful medicine for the soul, fasting, is it becomes the antidote for the concupiscence of the eye, the pride of Adam to know more about something beyond God, and also the concupiscence of the flesh to eat, and also to the eyes. Come to think about this, the symbol of a most popular digital gadget is an apple. Was it prophetic to be a victim of the apple late in the century? So think about that. Let us not be victim of all these gadgets. We can have control over them. Now, there's an important fasting that also we don't want to miss. The fasting of postponement of pleasure. There's a classic study reported by Stanford in 1970s. It was about the marshmallow effect. The kids were given a marshmallow, and they were given an incentive to be given more treat if they postponed to eat the marshmallow for 15 minutes. And those who are given who would eat the marshmallow right away as it's served, they're given the choice. They were also counted. The outcome of the study was very revealing. Those who postponed pleasure or the marshmallow for 15 minutes had a better outcome of life. Relationship, they'll become less impulsive in terms of choosing their partners. They also become more successful in life in terms of their career. So postponement was also reinforced by the vision of the Virgin Mary in Lipa, Batangas in the Philippines. Fasting doesn't have to say, she said to the seer who gave us a lecture, fasting doesn't have to be starvation. Fasting is depriving ourselves with our senses. For example, if you're thirsty, you can fast by delaying drinking the water that you need for maybe a few seconds for the glory of God, for the sake of His sorrowful passion. Or eating something that you are going to eat and say, I'm going to delay a little bit for the sake of a soul. So that's beautiful. It's not painful at all. But if you do it every day, it becomes more powerful. Saint Jose Maria Escrivá, the founder of Opus Dei, is best known for his suggestions. If you deprive yourself of one sugar for your coffee every day and offer it up for a soul, imagine how many souls would be lining up for you to meet you at the gates of heaven because you saved his soul because of the sugar that you deprive yourself. So these are things that are so rich in the Catholic faith, that are so relevant in our health. Let's start with caloric fasting, easy intermittent fasting, 16 hours window, and then eat for 6 hours, or alternate day fasting, or I challenge you though to do the 500 calorie diet for 7 days, at least once a year, because it has more. Is more powerful in terms of rejuvenation of the stem cells. One classic study that was published reported in that book was that diabetic patients who fasted, diabetic patients who would want to fast when you're diabetic, when you're fasting, it rejuvenates the pancreatic cells such that the diabetes heals. And think about the other things that happens when you're fasting. Your brain. It could possibly be a good prevention for dementia if you have if you fast from sugar, which is the best way to fasting first, and fasting intermittently and fasting regularly as a Catholic on Wednesdays and Fridays. And of course, other things combined with lifestyle, exercise. The core is meditation of His unconditional love, the unconditional love of Christ through His passion. That is the meditation that really is the core of our lifestyle, because that has been proven in science in functional MRI that the circulation circulates more in the hippocampus and less than the amygdala, and also the anterior cingulate, which is the center for processing emotion, so that your emotion becomes more meaningful and less impulsive. And also the prefrontal cortex, which is a center for executive function, to be able to decide with rightfulness, with righteousness, in terms of deciding moral judgment, relationship, finances, career. So in essence, fasting cannot be underestimated. It cannot be ignored, because fasting is very important for our lifestyle. It is important for our health, for immune function, for our gut, and moreover, it's good for the soul. So if you have any questions, thank you, Crack 20121 from the red platform, YouTube, Beanie Boy High School, and Donna, we miss you. I miss you. We have to catch up. And Jose, thank you very much. Today is Fat Tuesday. We would like to invite you for a Fat Tuesday here, where everything sweet and fat. We will be celebrating immediately after our talk. Welcome to Ave Maria. Next Tuesday, we'll be talking about corporal mortification, the importance of exercise, and how it relates to our mind, body, and soul. Thank you again. There you go.